Thanks everyone. Thanks FirstMark for inviting me here. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about the future of supply chain. My name is Krenar Komoni. I'm the CEO and founder at Tive. And at Tive, what we do is we provide real-time tracking of shipments, which leads to visibility into our customer supply chains. And you'll get to understand a little bit more what that is all about. So today what I want to talk about is the future of supply chains in general. So how many of you know what a supply chain is? Awesome. So some of you don't. That's good that I made this slide. So what is supply chain anyway? If you think of everything in this room, those lamps, these chairs, the computer here, has come from somewhere and it had to go through multiple steps. And supply chain essentially is a system of a bunch of organizations, a bunch of people, a bunch of activities that happen between those people and organizations for one purpose and one goal: to bring things from a supplier all the way to us, the end consumer, the customer. The customer could be a distribution center too, could be a retailer, but at the end it's being consumed by us. And all of this is changing. This is a quick slide from a large CPG company. CPG stands for consumer packaged goods. FMCG stands for fast moving consumer products. So think of like detergents, toilet paper, things like that. And you can see some of the things that are changing. So if you have a portfolio of products, instead of having one detergent, now you have multiple detergents. One's for babies, organic, non-organic. It's trying to satisfy different consumers. Minimum order quantities are changing. Instead of just shipping one pallet now, if you're a large CPG company, you have to maybe ship one unit to an end consumer. It's changing. Instead of shipping to 300,000 customers that this CPG company has to 300,000, let's say, distribution center, they now have to look into how do we actually reach 7 billion customers. And with Amazon, which we call in supply chain the Amazon effect, everybody now expects shipments to go in 2 days. If you order something online, you want it in 2 days at your house. If you find something that's, let's say, $1 or $2 cheaper, but it's going to get there in 2 weeks, you just go back to Amazon Prime and buy it there. And those expectations are changing. It's going to be people expecting things in 30 minutes or within the day. And impact on people and planet, that's almost a must-have these days. So as this is happening, supply chains are not becoming simpler. They're definitely trending towards higher complexity, and that complexity really has an effect on overall consumer behavior, but overall supply chains of these customers. So what markets are trending towards is that they're becoming very sensitive to service. So in order to meet demands of this complex supply chain, service is becoming quite important, because customers require companies to let them know that a particular shipment's upcoming. So that value-added service of visibility is quite important. And having reliability to know that a particular shipment is coming on time and knowing at what time it's being picked up, when it's actually being delivered, it's quite important to actually make these supply chains, these complex supply chains, efficient as they need to be. So what are we all chasing, or what are we kind of dreaming for? This is a slide, I took it from supply chain thought leader, this guy, Art Mesher. And if you think of an enlightened supply chain, this is what it is. It's end-to-end supply chain transparency. We know everything that's happening from the raw material all the way to the end consumer. We want to be able to sense and respond to events. So we want to be able to know exactly if a particular product is exceeding, let's say, temperature events. It's supposed to be within a temperature rate. Could be a pharmaceutical product, could be food. We want to be able to sense in real time, not 6 hours from now or a day from now, to respond to it. We want to use intelligence to react with speed. We want to learn from past events, from all the shipments that have occurred, so that you can make it efficient and better next time. And you want to be intelligently be able to plan for the future. So use that past data, look at the future, and plan for it. So how do we make this happen? So what I want to talk to you about today is a little bit about what are the steps that is going to take us to get there. These are some of the, so supply chains are really becoming the value chain. These are just two quick slides from Gartner. Gartner is a large research and advisory firm, and they consult on IT and supply chain quite a bit. And if you look at on the left side, in order to make this happen, using Excel is not going to happen. So you want to use APIs, you want to be SQL, you want to use the tools of today, which supply chain logistics actually don't have them yet. But that's actually happening as we speak. And the other one to look into is the hype cycle, the Gartner hype cycle. So if you look at where visibility is, if I would say, let's say if you look at the top, at the peak of maybe blockchains there, AI there for supply chain, but visibility is really ready for mass adoption. And customers, consumers, companies are really expecting it today. And it's been pretty exciting to be part of this journey right now with Tive. But what does visibility mean? And I'll jump into what visibility means, but where are we going to get to that enlightened supply chain and kind of the future of supply chain? The first step is visibility, and then we're going to go into predictions, after that into prescriptions, and finally automation. And I'll talk briefly about all of them, one by one. So what does visibility mean? So where are we today with visibility? Let's think of trucks. Trucks have been being tracked for quite a few years now, and telematics into trucks has become proliferated quite a bit, and there's millions of trucks in the United States and Europe that are being tracked. And what has happened is the exchange between those trucks, that data is mostly time being used through EDIs, which is this electronic data exchange interchange mechanism, which is quite old. Sometimes you get 30 minutes, sometimes you get 6-hour delays on that interchange. And that has changed to maybe putting truck drivers with smartphones and tracking those smartphones so you know where those trucks are. But it's really not scalable. So what has happened is this new thing called the Electronic Logging Device Mandate, or the ELD mandate from the US government, which requires every single truck to be tracked and to log so that truckers cannot work more than 14 hours a day. So that's their limit. And this actually goes after that to the Department of Transportation so they can keep monitoring that. But the good news about this is that all this data is now available on the cloud, and these telematics companies have APIs so you can access that data. And this is becoming more and more, kind of the network effect of it is happening. And you can take shipment data, link it to a particular telematic device of a truck, and be able to track it. So suddenly you have visibility. And what we do at Tive, we provide another layer of visibility on top of that so you can figure out what's actually happening with the goods inside the trailer using IoT devices or hardware, which I can talk about later after this talk. And on top of that, it's not just trucks that are being tracked. We have vessel information. We can know exactly where the vessel is because they have satellites communication, they have GPS. There's this thing called AIS data. As they get close to the shore, we can pull that type of data and know exactly where the ships are, when are they coming, what port they're going to go next. We can track flights. I mean, you guys do flight tracker. It's same thing for cargo air too. You'll be able to track that air freight. And the key now is to be able to connect all these pieces together so you can provide end-to-end visibility. Because when you ship something from raw material from a supplier all the way to the end consumer, it's not just one truck, it's not just one airplane, it's not just one vessel, it's multiple things, and putting those together is something that's happening today. And then where do we go after visibility? It's really more predictions, and predictions are quite helpful because now I can tell a distribution center, hey, because of the visibility now, I can predict that I'll be there between 1 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. I predict that I'm going to be late. I predict that I'm going to be here at this time to pick up. And distribution center then suddenly has capability to change their schedule, do things in real time, and adjust things in real time so they can meet the demands of that end consumer, which is us, and we can get things in 30 minutes and get things in one day. Otherwise, without visibility, which was the first thing, we cannot do predictions, and without predictions, we cannot plan for the future. But after predictions, what is interesting is prescriptions. And that's really exciting because predictions are still happening today, and I think they're becoming more and more used by a lot of customers. but prescription is quite interesting because you can now, before you even start a shipment, before the supplier puts something in the shipment to get to the manufacturer before a distribution center, you know with, let's say, 80%, 90%, 95% confidence at what time that shipment is going to be there. And you can prescribe that, hey, I realize you're shipping pharma products. They are at this temperature range. I see that there's weather patterns happening. I see that it's winter. I see that it's summer. I see you going through this port. I see you're using this carrier. Why don't you use this other carrier? Because we've seen this other carrier behave better at these weather conditions. Why don't you use at this other port? Because last year at this time with this weather condition, this other port really gets congested. Hey, there's a strike happening at the other port. Why don't you change it? There's weather patterns happening in one. So you can prescribe before, because today it's all being done essentially blindly. You know things that, you just expect things to arrive and let's start a shipment. This way you can prescribe, and I think that's something that's going to be in the future. And up to this, so we do predictions, we do prescriptions. The next thing is automation, and that's where things kind of happen magically. We just expect things to show up at our house, and they just magically went from the supplier to the manufacturer, distribution center to retailer to us. And automation is going to let that kind of allow that to happen. And one piece of automation is also driverless trucks. Eventually maybe drones will come into play, but think of driverless truck. Today, too many drivers, we have a limit. Because of the ELD mandate, you can only drive 14 hours. But if I have a Tesla that could drive itself, can drive 24 hours, well, maybe 1 hour charging, that's a different game. Now suddenly you automated supply chains. And in order for that to happen, there's all these other things in the past need to happen, because visibility needs to be there. We have to have reliable tracking. We have to have a reliable understanding of what the goods are doing. So just some quick final thoughts of where kind of this is going. There we have a lot of laws in our favor. You guys know Moore's law is kind of computing doubles every time, and it just gets better and better every year. We know Kumi's law, which as computing gets better, one thing that also gets better is the battery life. It's the energy that you need to compute the same thing also gets halved. And then you have Metcalfe's law, which if you, the network effect is kind of proportional to the square of the number of users, or the number of nodes, the number of trucks, the number of telematics devices, the number of sensors. And that network effect, it just proliferates throughout the supply chain, and that actually gets us from kind of visibility, predictions, prescriptions, and finally to automation. And that's really exciting to be in this space today. It's, that's kind of the future. Imagine kind of a frictionless future where everything happens by magic. Things get shipped, people get paid, things just get done magically. And in order for that to happen, you need potentially blockchain, and definitely you need sensing of goods. Because if you're shipping something and you want it to magically happen, you want to know that that shipment arrived at a particular destination, let's say between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m., because that's what a retailer required. And for a retailer to pay you, they want to make sure that that shipment arrived, didn't hit a few shock levels, let's say. It didn't hit a lot of road bumps. It was within a particular temperature band, and it matches the Wi-Fi signatures, the GPS signatures, the cellular signatures of that location to make sure that with 99.99% confidence, this package arrived on time and it's in good condition. And then we, using smart contracts, having immutable data using blockchain, we can potentially execute payments. And that's kind of where I see the future, and it's really exciting to be part of it with Tive. So thank you for joining, and thank you for listening.
Great, very interesting. Thanks, Krenar. You were very kind to not do this as a company pitch, but this is actually your chance. Could you actually tell us more about Tive, what you guys do in some detail?
Okay, definitely. So what we're doing is we're providing, like I said, real-time tracking of shipments for our customers. And the way we do that, we're helping manufacturers and shippers and logistics providers kind of understand what's happening with their goods in transit. And the way we do that is two things. One with hardware, and the other piece is with software too. But the hardware piece, because we're in a hardware talk here, is this guy here. It's a sensor. It's a real-time tracking device. You can put it on any shipment, and you'll know in real time where it is. And where it is through cellular triangulation, through GPS, and through Wi-Fi location. So it works like your phone. And on top of location, you get to know its condition, temperature, humidity, shock, tilt, light exposure. So we know when a package is open or closed. We'll know where a temperature exceeds. And all this data goes straight to the cloud, which...
How does it connect to the cloud?
Using cellular. So this one has 2G and 3G connectivity, and it works everywhere in the globe where there's cellular connectivity. And one thing that's unique compared to any other tracker in the market is its battery life. This lasts for more than 1 year, even though it's really thin and it has a small battery in it. And that's one quite a big of advantage of when you're shipping through ocean, or you want more data if you're shipping on short shipments.
That's interesting, because typically the trade-off with cellular is that precisely it's not very battery efficient. So how did you, out of curiosity, how did you guys do that?
I think that's one of our kind of, we've done a lot of good work on the firmware side and hardware design, but mostly it's been on the firmware side to make sure that that battery life lasts a long time.
Very good. And so who do you sell to?
So we sell to manufacturers. So think of electronics companies who they want to track base stations, let's say, across the globe. We sell to automotive companies who want to track engines, want to track their model cars maybe when they ship them across the globe. We sell to logistics providers who have been asked by their customers to track maybe game consoles or leather goods. We sell to pharma companies who are tracking chemicals, active ingredients globally.
And that's sort of exactly my question, right? So if I'm a manufacturer,
yes.
I don't, obviously I work with a logistics provider and I don't own the container that my stuff gets into. So how does the, I guess, the power play work between the manufacturer and the logistics provider? The manufacturers force the logistics provider to put this thing on their container?
I think the power play is quite clear that if a manufacturer wants to do something, they can do it because it's their product. And if they want to track their own product, they have the right to do that.
And then the beauty is that once this is on the container, then the container gets reused for another manufacturer, so you can go to the other manufacturer and sell to that manufacturer?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. Do we have questions? One over there.
I love that microphone.
Interesting company, definitely, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
My question is around how you view enterprise blockchain solutions from like IBM, Microsoft, and how they might compete in the same space as you guys.
We don't provide blockchain solutions. Just want to be clear with that. Yeah. So, for instance, with TradeLens, which is the IBM Maersk blockchain, we're very open to working with them. And we're working actually with, open to working with other blockchain solutions. I think those are going to become more and more useful as time goes on, but today that's not our value add. Our value add is really the real-time tracking and helping companies have visibility across their supply chains today.
There's a lot of resistance to blockchain among our speakers tonight. Come on guys, you know you want it.
I know you want it, yeah. That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, thank you for the information on your company's product. How does your product work with or compete against other types of solutions like RFID, barcodes that helps manufacturers track items?
Very good question. I think one thing is, if you think of RFIDs and barcodes, they're passive. So the only information that you get is transactional at a particular gate. When an item goes through a gate, that's when you know it arrived there. If you want to know in real time that it's delayed at a particular port, RFIDs and barcodes don't do that. So that's one of the advantages that we have. It's active and it's real time. And that's where the world is going, like I showed.
Maybe one last one over there.
Hi. One of the big trends you talked about was personalization of products. How much of that is a supply chain issue, and how much of it is, what goes on at each element of that supply chain in the factory? And what's your thinking about technology that can bring to bear to make that personalization challenge easier for the elements of the supply chain?
Good question. I don't think I have the best answer to that, to be honest. I think, but it could be solved, you're right, purely on the factory, because they can just personalize things there. Think of 3D printing, think of other things where things can get personalized for a particular customer. But then at the last mile, things change. Because instead of now shipping the same, if I had, let's say, 1,000 products of the same detergent, now 100 have to go here because they're different shape, different size, different brand, and kind of organizing that is more challenging. So instead of just shipping a pallet now, I have to break that pallet into maybe 3 pieces.
Well, we have a couple of questions. Let's just do them quickly.
Okay.
How do you see the upcoming car-to-car communication that the government's passing benefit your device, like car-to-truck and car-to-car communication?
That's a good question. I think initially probably won't do any benefits to our device but I think it'll benefit most likely around, benefits are going to be there around traffic control and traffic jams and making sure that cars and trucks move and they don't hit one another. I think that's one of the immediate benefits of that. But that's going to take really a long time for that to happen.
All right, last question.
Yes, last question.
So are the current big supply chain providers like XPO Logistics, are they just like dropping the ball on offering these kinds of like real-time tracking for their like services?
Absolutely not. Now, logistics companies actually are the ones who are not dropping the ball because they've been asked by the consumers to provide great customer service. And what they're doing is they're providing real-time tracking through this ALD mandate, through trucks. And then what they're doing is saying, now I know exactly I have shipment XYZ inside of a trailer, and I can track this trailer in XPO Logistics, and other ones have that data, and they're providing it to potentially people who are building real-time visibility tools like us.
All right, I lied. This is the last question.
Okay.
Save for last. How do you go by this problem of government regulations and custom clearance, especially from manufacturers based in other places, such as China, everywhere, and then go through the process? I guess I'm getting, how do you track the products when they had to go through all these various barriers?
If products are going through those barriers, our trackers are going through those barriers.
Like, for example, there are tons of ships parked in the ports in Hong Kong, and they don't really know what's the next ship they're getting onto. And then, because I have a problem of tracking my own shipment, they don't know the same date.
That's a good point, because sometimes a container can miss a particular ship because of congestion and other things. And as a consumer, as a customer, as a logistics provider, sometimes you don't know that. And it could be too late, and you have to pay this thing called demurrage, which is sometimes a few $100s a day, just because you were more than 2-3 days at a particular port. But if you had our tracker, you would know in real time, whether it's every hour, every 2 hours, every 20 minutes, that your container is still there, and you thought maybe it's already on a ship, but it's not. Yes, we're tracking the container. I mean, when we're inside of a container, we know where that container is.
All right, very cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.